I don't even know where to begin with this video. What the hell did we just watch? The Italian Grand Prix was basically 2020 summed up in a race. Absolutely chaos, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was edge of your seat gripping racing and it was great. And for once this season we didn't have the typical top teams on the podium, and if you haven't watched the race you need to watch the race. It was probably the best race since maybe Germany last year, and that just shows you every time Mercedes have a bad race it just throws up the most exciting race. That's what happened in Germany and that's what happened in Italy, and it was great. I can't believe it. I absolutely loved it, and I'm gonna talk about the main headlines of what happened within the race because I feel like if I did a proper race review I could be here for absolutely hours. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the main headlines and talk about my driver of the day, and hopefully it'll be nice and short and snappy for you. So to start with, we have to talk about Mercedes because it was just an off day for them, and you know, they sometimes have them but we rarely see them, and when they have their off days you can tell because it just throws up the most exciting races, and it's great. It's great for the fans, and I think this was a time when we kind of needed a race like the Italian Grand Prix because Mercedes have just been so dominant and everyone was saying it's getting boring, I don't want to watch it anymore. But this is why I love this sport, because you can never predict a race from a race. Anything can happen, and that's what happened at the Italian Grand Prix. So to be fair, Lewis actually got a great start. He was pulling away and you know it was kind of looking like his race basically. He kind of was off into the distance and was like, I'll see you in Mugello lads, but the race kind of had other plans for him. So a safety car came out to remove Kevin Magnussen's car as he actually just parked it by the entry to the pit lane, and they had closed the pit lane as the stewards tried to wheel it back in. However, Lewis didn't get that message, he didn't see the red sign, and he actually pitted when the pit lane was closed. So that left him with a 10 stop go penalty, which is quite a hefty penalty, but I think it was full right to do that because, you know, for the safety of the stewards. And then that just kind of ruined his race. But for me, he still drove amazing. If you compare him to Bottas, I'm going to talk about Bottas now, and you all know how I feel about Bottas, so I'm going to try not to ramble and criticise him too much because I feel like I do that in my videos all the time. But just a bad weekend. Could you say weekend? Day, definitely day. He had an awful start. He got swamped by the McLarens down into at least the second corner. Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris were in P2 and P3. And then I think Daniel did this amazing overtake on Bottas and he just could not get past them. And everyone was saying, oh, it's the Mercedes, it can't overtake, it has to be out in front. But if we now talk about Lewis Hamilton, he was at the back of the grid after his stop-go penalty. He was about 20 seconds behind the cars in front, so had so much work to do and was overtaking perfectly. He was pulling out some amazing overtakes, and if you compare him to Bottas just couldn't overtake the whole race, and Lewis in the end ended up finishing P7, which is outstanding, and was, well, if he had a few more laps definitely would have caught Bottas. So it just shows you the difference in driving, and they have the same car, so how comes Lewis can overtake but Bottas can't? And it was just a mess for Bottas, and he has some serious thinking to do. Now for Bottas as well, this should have been a race he won. With the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen having an awful race, his main competitors in the championship, he should have taken this race by storm and really clinched that win to gain the maximum points he could to close the gaps to them in the championship. But he couldn't once again, and it's just so frustrating, and I think everyone is starting to feel the same about Bottas now. We're just kind of disappointed with what he can do. Yeah, bad weekend for Bottas, but I still think Lewis drove really well, and you know, Mercedes are going to come back from this so strong. They always do. Definitely Lewis, he'll go out to Mugello next week and have a massive point to prove. So now I'm going to talk about McLaren. They had a great weekend. They looked so strong all weekend, even during practice, qualifying. Amazing, amazing. And before the safety car came out, we obviously had Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris running in P2 and P3, and for me personally that was really emotional. Because when I first got into the sport I was a massive McLaren fan, and I still am now, but to see them back up there was so emotional for me, because obviously they've been through so much. Obviously with the Honda days it wasn't great, they were basically back of the field. So for me, seeing them back at the top, and I was hoping they would get that P2 and P3. I would have loved to have seen Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris on the podium together. If that would have happened, I would have literally been bawling my eyes out. But yeah, I think they drove amazing, and Carlos Sainz all weekend was brilliant. And I don't want to take anything away from Pierre Gasly, who I'll get onto in a minute, because for me Carlos Sainz kind of clinched the weekend. He had a great qualifying, getting that P3, and then obviously he was so dominant in the race. He was even catching Lewis and pulling away from Lando before the safety car came out, which was incredible. So yeah, for me McLaren are just going from strength to strength, and it was great. And I think Lando Norris could have definitely been on that podium. I think he kind of got messed up a bit on the red flag because Lance Stroll had got a free pit stop or something. I think they changed the tyres, which he was quite upset about, well, annoyed about after the race, because then he just couldn't really catch him on the restart. But you know, P2 and P4 from McLaren is just amazing, and I think that team is going from strength to strength. And in my previous video I did one about Daniel Ricciardo going to McLaren and how I think they are going to be so strong in the future, and I think we're just starting to see the birth of that, which I'm so excited for. I think they've got great things to come, and I hope they can continue that success into Mugello. So now I'm going to talk about the restart from the red flag. The grid was completely reversed. It was crazy. I was looking at this grid, I was like, can this be right? Like, what happened? It was actually chaos. Before the red flag, so many cars came in and pitted, and it just messed the whole grid up basically. And then on the restart we had Lewis Hamilton, who obviously had his 10-stop-go penalty, Pierre Gasly, Kimi Raikkonen, Antonio Giovinazzi and Carlos Sainz, I think. And you're like, how is the Alfa Romeo up there? And so we got started again, and Kimi Raikkonen, bless him, was driving for his life, and I was kind of hoping he would like stick up there, but the Alfa Romeo just couldn't compete with the other teams around him, and he was just getting past so easily. So unfortunately we started to see him drop off the grid, which was a shame, because I think Kimi definitely deserved points. He hasn't got any at the minute, and I think he thoroughly deserved that. So that was a shame, but that put Pierre Gasly into first after Lewis took his 10-stop-go penalty, and Carlos Sainz into second, and then Lance Stroll went into third, which was crazy, absolutely crazy. So now I'm going to talk about Pierre. He won the race. Amazing. Couldn't be happier for him. He, for me, has been the driver of the season. since the get-go, he has been outperforming that AlphaTauri so much, and he thoroughly deserved that win. Thoroughly deserved it. He's just been outstanding, from getting dropped last year from Red Bull to losing his best friend to then even a few weeks ago his house getting burgled. To come on and win a race for the first time was incredible, and he drove it amazingly, and he had so much pressure from Carlos Sainz because Carlos Sainz was actually catching him, and he did it amazing. He did say in the post interviews after the race that he was really struggling. He was just trying to keep the car on the track because the tyres had gone. So I think that also shows you how class he is as a driver for coming under so much pressure. I think there was 4/10 between Pierre and Sainz at the end, which is incredible. I think if there was a few more laps, Carlos would have definitely got him. But you know, you can't take that away from the fact that he drove brilliantly, and I think Red Bull would definitely be scratching their heads thinking, what have we done? But yeah, couldn't think of a nicer guy to get that win, and he thoroughly deserved it. And it was a bit ironic and a bit of history repeating itself, as Sebastian Vettel actually won his first ever Grand Prix at Monza with Toro Rosso, and it's just a kind of similar thing for Pierre, so maybe Pierre will be a world champion in the future. So for me, of course, the driver of the day has to be Pierre Gasly. He did get voted driver of the day by the fans, which I completely agree with, but in a close, like literally close second, it has to be Carlos Sainz. He had an amazing weekend, getting that P3, faultless, to be fair, faultless. He outperformed his teammate Lando Norris, and you know, amazing. This race was definitely what the doctor ordered. You know, people have been saying F1's boring, but that race was just incredible, and I still can't believe what I watched. I feel like I need to go and watch it again, but I don't know if I can go through all that emotion again. Yeah, when Pierre crossed that finish line, had a little tear in my eye because it was very emotional, but a great race, and I can't wait for the next one. Now I'm going to leave that race review there. If you haven't watched the race, you need to watch it because it was one of the greats, and I think that race will probably be going down in history for how good it was. So definitely watch it if you haven't, because it was amazing. And if you have any other video suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what ideas you have, videos you want to see from me. So let me know, and I will see you guys in my next video.